Hello everyone, my name is Funk McLovin. Here's another bonus episode with a special guest. We'll introduce her in the actual episode, but for now, I'd like to thank my patrons. Athena, Lakota, Iomakara, Zuza, Danica, Susa, Hyris, Pyrate, Zipperozic, Kaleidoscope Mediator, Elizabeth, Luna, and of course, Jojiro. If you're listening in the future, all of the bonus episodes are currently available on Patreon a week in advance, as well as other exclusives like the Florida Man podcast. More to the point, this episode covers the ANNA-Cestors, the Alternian trolls who came before the main ones. In this episode, we talk about Mindfang, her imperious condescension, the Signless, and his followers. I hope you enjoy. So, hello everybody. As I said in the introduction earlier, we have a special guest, and we're talking about the ANNA-Cestors, and who better to have talking about them than Anna from the ArticulatelyComposed YouTube channel. That was a joke, but no one laughed. I just wanted to make sure everyone knew that was a joke. That's okay. The audience is laughing. We had a bonus episode about the ANNA-Cestors, and now we're going to talk about the ANNA-Cestors, who do not feature heavily in the story or the rewrite that we're making. However, I think that they do merit their own discussion. So, in light of that, we invited someone who has made a lot of ancestor thoughts. Anna, to start us off, would you like to tell us what kind of, ancestor stuff you do?
Well, for those of you who are unaware, I am I wrote the book lyrics and music to the musical Time's Apprentice, which is based off the ancestor story. And it is my child. It got me into grad school. It is the reason why I am taught by Tony-winning professors right now. But yeah, I wrote a show about the entire ancestor timeline from the perspective of the handmaid, renamed Mara, because we file our serial numbers off in this house. And
that's good.
Yeah, I have a lot of opinions about, especially the characters that sing the most songs, that one being Mindfang, aka Amalia, the Dolorosa, aka Rosa, and Mara and Teresa I probably have a lot of opinions about too. And of course, yeah, the Signless, Kieran. I will accidentally call these characters by their Time's Apprentice names instead of by their official names, by the way.
Yes, and Time's Apprentice was, it was at SockCon, so those of you in the audience who attended SockCon will know Time's Apprentice probably. And like you said, they do have, alternate names because of that. So if you hear us saying wrong names, please forgive us. But yeah, watch Time's Apprentice. I would love to
watch Time's Apprentice.
Yes,
I put a lot of effort into it.
A lot of people did. I worked on it as well. I did some guitar stuff for it. It was very.
And thank you for doing that guitar stuff. That was
of course.
That brought such life to Epiphany that would have been completely dead if I had done it with MIDI.
But of course, yeah. As much as I'd love to talk about musical theater and the study thereof, that will be a bonus episode. AKA,
if you want to talk about
exist.
musical theater and the study thereof, come to my channel.
Yes,
I have a lot of original musicals there.
Yeah, but we're talking about the ancestors, which is significantly less fun, but also what our audience is here to discuss. So, this is going to be a 2-part bonus episode because we learned from our mistakes in the ancestor bonus episode, which you, yes, trying to discuss 12 characters within a reasonable time frame. It's hard. So yeah, we're going to talk about, this is part 1, which I glibly named The Ancestors Who Actually Matter. And we'll start out with the ancestor, because she is the only one to have a presence in the story. Second only to perhaps the handmaid, who really only shows up for a couple frames. The Condess. Let's talk about the Condess. Her imperious condescension, I've seen her called Mina Paishi's Senior. I don't know how accurate that is. But just, I think this is also the character who would have the most to say about her rewrites. We've already talked about her in the Act 6 episodes. Things like removing the blackface, obviously, the unintentional blackface, that is. Removing some of the weird vernacular that Hussey chose to use. So we can skip over that and just talk about how she is characterized. And I have a lot of thoughts about her, but I'll let Janiyah start off, and then we'll go left from right, like always.
Okay. I mean, like you said, we've already talked about a lot of the kind of, like, stuff that's bad about the Condes and things that would be kind of changed, like, in terms of presentation. But I think that, because I think part of the thing with the ancestors in the text as a whole, not just talking about them as, like, abstractions, is to figure out how much you want to talk about them and how much you want to, like, and how you want to tie that back into the main work. And I think the Condes is kind of like the bridge between... The Condes and Mindfang's journal are the bridge between the world of the ancestors and the history that represents, and then how that, like, echoes into the present time in the comic, except that the Condes is literally the same character. So, like, I think that having some degree of framing about, like, because we've been talking the whole time about, like, the concept of all these different systems and what they represent, and the Condes is the representative of the Alternian Empire and everything that entails. And I think it's important to kind of, like, give a little bit of backstory on the Empire and, like, why it is the way it is, how that relates to, like, what Doc Scratch is doing, how that relates to the sort of overall concept of the narrative structure that everyone's sort of, like, laboring under until they're able to break free of it, which we haven't quite gotten there yet because we're not at the retcon yet. But, like, I think I think that it's worth showing, like, some context and some backstory of, like, sort of like what the Condes was doing, how that related to, like, the revolution that was, like, forming under her reign, what the response was to that, and then, like, all of her shit with, like, coming back to the planet and the planet being destroyed, and then, like, how that influences the future, because I feel like that kind of, like, you see echoes of that with a couple of other characters and, like, a couple of events that happen in the actual present time of the comic, and I think that's important. So I think this is the one character that you want to, like, make sure you have the most, like, coherent consistency between, like, the ancestor story and the present time, where it's clear that this is the same person and, like, there is a continuous story.
Okay, I get what you're saying. Yeah, she is the bridge between old Alternia and new Alternia, and the bridge between she's the one that the Alpha Kids see. She's the troll that the Alpha Kids know as the Batter Witch. So she's also that kind of ambassador. Anna, what are your thoughts on the Condes?
So have either of you read the fic Shout to the Devil by Spock and Daw?
No.
Say that name one more time so the viewers can hear
Shout to the Devil?
Shout to the Devil. Bucky, did you read it?
The author sounds familiar, but if I have read it, it hasn't been for a while.
It's an old fic. I read it back when I was, like, 16 years old. It's been around for a while, but it is probably the best piece of, like, Condes fan work out there. Like, so she's never, like, it humanizes her without putting her, like, shit she's done in the right kind of thing. Like, she is as much a part of the system. So in the comic, she is just this figure.
And what a figure it is.
She's there. She's this evil figure.
Sorry, continue. I'm sorry.
Gotta love those big titty aliens. But, yeah, she's just this figurehead. This, evil top of the empire. etc., she doesn't really have character to her.
She's an icon,
her only
yeah.
character, quote unquote, being, fucking racism. But I really like this fic because it takes the Condis and like from the time that she ascends and takes the throne up until like the Vast Glove, and it's the entire ancestor story through her eyes, and like she revels in the power, but also she's obligated to have the power at the same time.
Yes.
And I feel like that's something interesting that could have been explored more.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if that would be a good idea to have explored in the comic, just because the comic's already so big and dense and we don't really need any more stuff. But, like, if the Condis is gonna be a character, she might as well be a character. I highly recommend that fic.
That actually ties into some of the other stuff we've been talking about in terms of, like, how the Empire is presented and how, like, the stuff with Gamzee and Kurlauz in particular, where it's like they're agents of the narrative because they have to be. Like, there's this sort of, like, required timeline that everyone has to adhere to, and, like, the villains are part of that too. Like, they have agency, but they also kind of don't, I guess, is how we've been framing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if I remember correctly, the first line of the fic is, I used to use this fic as audition monologues if I auditioned for the Condis. It was something along the lines of, like, when you're 10, you kill the old queen just to make your mom shut up. Like, everything she does is for Gib-Galib.
That makes sense. Yeah, I like that too. The ancestors are all basically blank slates, and frankly, the Condis is no different, even though she is a character in her own right. And I guess for my time expounding on that, there are two threads that I have seen people pursue that I really like. That's like my pet thing about the Condis. And that is, they're twofold. One is, Bucky said on a previous episode, as Jane's mother figure, which could have been amazing. And the other one is as, she's also a mother figure to Pop Pop. And what's interesting about the comic is Pop Pop never leaves the Condes's care, right? It's Jade who leaves in the Alpha timeline, not John or June or whatever she would be in that iteration in our rewrite. And I think that would be cool to, like, reflect on that a little bit. How the Condes is a mother figure, and maybe she grows, like, vulnerable for some reason. Why didn't John leave? Because I can't imagine, like, a man, of course, in the original comic, not in our rewrite, but a man who went on to be, like, a comedian and in the style of, like, a vaudeville guy like Harry Anderson. I don't know. That's interesting as a line to pursue, and maybe that doesn't have a place in the rewrite because, the Condes might not be as fleshed out in that kind of abridged situation. But in a rewrite, it could be the Condes as a foe, as an antagonist. That isn't... Because right now she's basically just a boss fight, which really sucks, because there's a lot of characterization that does go into her. More than any other ancestor. Bucky, what are your Condes thoughts?
I did have a decent amount to say about the Condes in one of the previous episodes that we talked about Act 6. I do really like the idea of getting to explore, like, how upset she is about Alternia being gone, and, like, maybe it's because she just can't get things to go her way anymore in the Earthsea session. I know I'm, like, skipping ahead through, like, her role.
Oh, you mean the Alpha Earth session?
Oh yeah, the Alpha Earth session, sorry. The Earth that will become Earthsea later, I guess. But not at that point in time, you're right. But yeah, because I think the reason that she's upset that it's gone is that she can't control it, and it's not going her way, and, like, she was a thief of life, but not like, that doesn't translate to luck, it translates to power, and all the power in the world doesn't matter if you keep killing your subjects.
Yeah, it's very, very Machiavellian in, like, you will do anything to preserve power, but never forget, like, your power comes from your citizenry, basically. And she has none.
Yeah, because all the trolls are already dead by that point.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, it's sort of like hubris that she strayed too far away from Glib, but also, like, that was another inevitable piece of the game, that meteors were going to rain down on the planet, and Glib was going to get hurt and kill everybody on the planet.
Right. Yeah. I agree.
Actually, that's... God, I didn't even think about that during the Act 6 episode, but that's one of the biggest differences between Alternia and Earth, is that, like, feasibly, some humans probably could have survived, because there were a lot of meteors, and I don't know, you could hand wave some shit there, but every troll is dead, for surezies.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes. Indeed. I believe, I don't remember if this is fanon or canon, but I believe that the reason that Glub had to kill everybody is because there weren't many meteors, because the trolls dispatched the Black King so quickly that he couldn't call any down or something. Again, I don't remember if that's fanon or canon.
I
I've
think that
never
might be
heard that.
fanon.
Yeah, if it is fanon, I like the idea, because it would mean that, like you say, the trolls were killed by design, not just because that was the natural part of Skaya, and that plays into the Condes's, like, role as she is the queen of everything on 2 different planets, on 3 different planets, 2 different versions of Earth, 1 version of Alternia, and she basically never actually gets to lead, because she's always in the service of, like, someone else, whether it be Doc Scratch, whether it be Lord English, whether it be Glub, whether it be, like, just the cycle of Alternian empresses. But the other thing I wanted to talk about with the rewrite, because we're leaning heavily into the political sort of analogy of Alternia is Earth, but more. The Condes could represent some kind of, I don't know. In that situation, she would be, like, kind of the president, or whoever runs, like, you know, America. Because aptly, like the president, she is not only a leader, she is a figurehead as well.
I thought you were going to say war criminal for a second.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, not gonna lie. Does anyone have anything to say about the sort of allegory aspect to that, other than what I've said, which is basically just acknowledging?
I feel like the backstory of the revolutionaries and, like, everything that happens there is going to be a pretty on-the-nose allegory for how political dissent is handled in Alternia and Earth, and, like, what that implies about this whole system that we've created. Because, like, the whole system that we've set up, everything, including Doc Scratch and the narrative itself in the pre-retcon timeline, is it's one where dissent is ultimately stamped out. Like, it might exist for a brief time, but it can't survive because it's contrary to the predestination thing that we've got going on. So, like, I feel like you've kind of got a little bit of, like, some echoes going on. And so one of the things that we did talk about in the Act 6 ones is the idea that, like, so we have established that Jane is kind of, like, in the original timeline is sort of willingly taking on the Crocker tier stuff, and Jade is sort of, like, falling into her anger at the system, and that gets twisted against her. So I think, like, there's some parallels you can draw there between, like, again, once the timeline has been changed and the story has been altered, we basically changed it from a story where dissent and revolution are doomed to failure to one where they have a chance of surviving. Like, not that it's guaranteed, but that all of the characters working together can bring that about. I think you could draw some like little parallels in there, especially when you start talking about the revolutionaries in this universe.
Yeah, that's all good Condi stuff. I was listening to this podcast about like the history of the U.S. presidents, and one of the things that struck me was how basically labor revolution in the U.S. has always been just stamped out militarily, which is very stark. And I think that would be a great allegory if, say, instead of the summoner being, for instance, just some revolutionary for whatever reason, he could be like a labor leader because he's a brown blood, he's a low blood, he's probably working some shitty job, and he's got those cool wings. And the Condess could be a force, and she could use people like Mindfang and Red Glare to basically be like, no, I'm going to stamp this out by force, and that could be cool. But that's, we'll file that away for we'll talk about that more when we get to those revolutionary figures. For now, however, let's talk about the Condess is the most story vital ancestor, yet Mindfang is the most characterized ancestor. Does that make sense? Because, we get we get her diary. We get her, like, I this is a side note, but I love to picture Mindfang, like, in a huge bed, like a 4-poster bed on her ship, like, kicking her feet up in the air, like, writing in a diary like an idiot.
Listen, Mindfang is a stationary nerd. I can't
Yes.
that.
Yes. I love the idea that Mindfang, like, talks shit in her, like, her persona is what Vriska sees, but in reality she's a lot more like Arania, where she's, like, bookish and long-winded and kind of a dweeb. But anyway, this time we'll go right to left. We'll talk about Mindfang general thoughts. So, Bucky, what are your Mindfang opinions?
Oh boy.
Oh boy. Put a big spotlight on Bucky. Sorry, Bucky.
This, I can't take credit for noticing this. This has been pointed out to me by a couple of people, but, like, she's very heavily themed around, like, the Spanish Armada and, like, Spanish privateers and such. Or Spanish. Yeah, so, that plays into, like, some dicier, actual real-world historical conquest that Spain did, especially because, so in the fuckery with Dante Bosco that's, like, weird and I've already objected to just because it's weird, it also, like, kind of, it retroactively makes all of the Nitrims Filipino, and the hook, like, there's just, like, consistent Dante Bosco in Hook imagery with those characters. So, and that's one of the places that Spain colonized, is the Philippines. So there's, like, I don't know I don't think that one was intentional, because there's a lot of, like, backtracking you have to do to get there. But the general imagery of conquest isn't great, and then if you want to analyze it on that level, it continues to be worse. So that's just something I'd like to throw out on the table, is, like, I think that it should be something that could be acknowledged and leaned into without having, like, graphic depictions of rape, perchance.
Yeah, we'll get
because,
to
like, you can have a horrible character without, like, depicting really nasty shit. You can allude to it, or, like, go up to a certain line, but, like, I'm fairly certain that Homestuck did straight up depict it, unless I'm misremembering, or it came very close to it.
It came close.
What?
Did
Yes.
the journal have
It came
In
very
the,
close.
I assume what you're talking about is in the journal
Yes.
when Mindfang is discussing her slave.
Yeah, who's heavily alluded to be the Dolorosa. Yeah.
That felt
Wait,
gross
it's
to
not
say.
canon that
I
it's
think
not.
it's
What?
explicitly.
No,
I
it's
thought it
not
was.
canon.
Is it explicitly?
Yeah.
No, okay, I
Dolorosa?
can explain
Okay.
this. So in the text, it's just a jade blood,
yes.
so it's not confirmed to be, but it is, like, it is de facto. Like, everyone, it's a fanon thing. However, it's like one of those fanon things where there's no evidence that it's anyone else. So why would it not be the Dolorosa?
It's in a mythologized story. Why would it not be the only other Jade Blood we've met? It would be weird thematically if it wasn't the only other Jade Blood we've met. So that I think it's good that she's horrible, but you have to decide the rating of the work that you're creating, I think. And like, if I don't know what we want to depict in the rewrite. The analysis here is that like Mindfang's inclusion in Homestuck, like, I think does ratchet it. Well, no, the language makes it R, but there's R for language and R for like depiction / illusion of non-sexual violence is like different. Violence. It's like, I don't know. I would. It's.
Right.
I feel like certain parents would sneak their kids in to see like Superbad or something, but not like the girl with the dragon tattoo. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, I get what you're saying. Yeah. So like
R for the fuck word and saying taint a lot is different than R for the sexual assault.
Yeah. I get what you're saying. I agree. I want to build on that by saying Mindfang is horrible, and I think that a character being horrible can be good, but the story never reacts to her horribleness, because the account we learn from Mindfang is basically the narration saying, here's what this book says, instead of anyone reading it, instead of anyone explaining it. I believe Doc Scratch talks about Mindfang at some point. So the only times we see this book are in kind of a vacuum where the story cannot react to her being horrible. If you're going to be...
you're right, because, like, you can draw a line between Vriska reading this and thinking it's okay to mind control Tavros into kissing her, but the text doesn't want to draw that line, and it doesn't want Vriska... Right.
The text will not say this
so,
is
like,
bad. Yes.
If you're gonna include it, it needs to be for some sort of reason, I think, especially because of how, like, Homestuck is trying to resist you going, yeah, Vriska's horrible because Mindfang's horrible, because Homestuck really wants you to think Vriska's great even when she's not.
Yeah.
And we're trying again to move away from that because it's more interesting if she gets to suck. So like, if we're gonna include this, then if we include this, then we also have to include the scene where Vriska mind controls Tavros into kissing her, but we have to frame it so that it's clear that, like, one, it's clear that they're related, and two, it's clear that, like, Vriska thinks it's okay because of this, and three, that it is explicitly not okay.
Yeah, exactly. Because right now in the story, to take that same example of Vriska forcing Tavros to kiss her, even though Kanaya is watching, she cries because she's, like, jealous that Vriska likes someone else, not because she thinks it's morally reprehensible. And she does, like, tut-tut at her when she abuses Tavros, but I really do think that no one says to Vriska throughout the entire fucking story, and this extends to Mindfang's journals as well, no one says to her, what you're doing is fucked up. No matter what good things you do, or how heroic you are, or how much you've changed, like, no one ever says that's fucked up. We as readers can intuit that, but it's a sign of a weak story when when you can't tell what the story is trying to say about this. You know what I mean? Like, is Homestuck trying to say, this is a girl boss moment, or is it trying to say, this is a fucked up person? It's very hard to tell. I'm not trying to be like bad faith about this, but this is why Vriskors exists. And to extend that to Mindfang, we need to have someone like maybe Vriska like sends June like a version of Mindfang's journals, and she's like, "Oh, this made me who I am. This is so cool." And June is like, "This is really bad. Like, slavery is bad, Vriska." And Vriska could like have cognitive dissonance about that. I think that would be cool. She could be like, "Oh, well, yeah, it's bad, but like it was fine back then."
Because that's something that's like that. Like you can read that as an explanation into the original work, but it's not actually offered up as like a justification Vriska makes to herself or to anybody else.
Yeah, I'm not going to say, because I don't. This is incredibly bad faith to say like Hussey meant to put Mindfang in a good light. That's not true. I don't think that's true. But that doesn't mean he's off the hook for like making it ambiguous. Like I said, Vriskors exists. Anna, what are your Mindfang thoughts?
Yes, my Mindfang thoughts. The girl who tore the sea to shreds. Her mind can make the world drop dead. Okay, I have a lot of thoughts about Mindfang. So, I'm sure we're all aware of that popular fan theory that when Mindfang starts dating the summoner, then something happens and the summoner has to mercifully kill her to put her out of her misery. I hate that. I hate that fan theory. And it's not clear in the comic how she dies. Obviously, all it says is like, I will be killed by my future mate Sprit, etc., etc. But I want it to be made clear, she does not die a heroic death. She does not die happy. She dies a broken fucking woman.
You can't pull a fucking Shadow Weaver, Mindfang. That's not fair. Continue, Anne.
Mindfang, she's done some horrible things. And, like, I don't think those horrible things should be erased. I think that's an important part of her as a character, that she is just awful. But she is not allowed to be lauded for being awful. And I mean, I'm kind of guilty of making her sexy girl boss too, because, like, I've written some fucking bangers for that girl. Going back to my show, you do not leave the theater thinking that Amalia Mindfang Circuit was a good person. You leave thinking, holy shit, that horrible person had everything that was coming for her.
Exactly. It's like Ursula from The Little Mermaid. She's hot and sexy, but she's also... The story lets us know she's terrible.
It's like, there was nobody there's no one in Homestuck who looks at that, and, like, I guess the only person who ever saw Mindfang's journal was Vriska, and Vriska is the most biased character
and like
of
Doc
all.
Scratch.
And Scratch.
Yeah.
But, like, if literally anyone else had seen it,
Yeah.
like, even other people on Alternia, like, imagine if, like,
Yes.
is Terezi pro-slavery? Imagine if Terezi read that and was like,
Vriska,
you idolize
what the fuck is this?
Yeah. You idolize this woman that, raped and killed a slave?
Vriska, this is cringe. Vriska, this whole journal is cringe.
That really could have and should have been a part of Vriska's character arc. Because, I mean, there was a bit of Vriska's character arc at the end, with parentheses Vriska, where it's like, I shouldn't have tried to be badass Mindfang look-alike type thing. Look at, Arania did that, and that fucked her up. It's not a good thing to try and emulate this person. But the thing is, like, that realization comes from watching Arania fuck up, not realizing that Mindfang was actually horrible. And the comic should really make some emphasis on her being just awful.
Honestly, the comic hates Arania more than it hates Mindfang sometimes.
Yeah.
Shit.
And, like, all Arania did was, like, fuck with some timeline shit.
Yeah, Arania just made a huge mistake. But Mindfang, like, enslaved people on purpose. Like, Mindfang also didn't have Spider Mom. That we know of, that is. Do you have any more thoughts,
I
Anna?
mean,
Sorry
who
for
knows who
interrupting.
her Lucis was, but
Yeah.
no, she was awful, and in my headcanon, she's also awful to her crew.
Yeah.
If we're, I earlier I mentioned Time's Apprentice, but I didn't mention I wrote the Mindfang Distant Quest route, so a lot of the way I imagine Mindfang treated her crew is in that, and like I don't picture, because okay, I know this is not a podcast about Pester Quest, but one thing that's like real frustrating about the Vriska Pester Quest route was like the example that Mindfang like did good things for the lower bloods.
Yeah, okay.
And she
Can we
didn't.
talk about that, please? Like, I fucking hate that so...
Like,
literally
oh,
in...
she was
oh my
part
God.
of this revolutionary group. No, she wasn't. She
No,
had a boy
that's...
toy.
Okay. Listen. In Mindfang's journals, literally, like, 90% of it is devoted to, like, haha, I killed people, I enslaved people, I did horrible things, I fucked over... I hung someone for fun because that was what I did. And then the last 10% is like, oh, by the way, then after all that cool shit that I did, I fucked off and helped some dumb lowbloods and like fucked a guy with wings. And the idea that that equates to like her being that I don't need to articulate this thought, do I? Like everyone knows what I'm trying to say here. Like that's fucked up.
Yeah.
Continue,
Mindfang
Anna.
was
Fuck.
not a revolutionary. Mindfang
No.
did what she wanted to further her own
She's a Hillary
goals.
Clinton.
And the only reason she managed to spend so much time fucking the summoner is because the summoner didn't yet know what she did to Rosa.
Rosa being which
The Dolorosa.
yeah, the Dolorosa. Thank you.
That one's probably a more self-explanatory.
Yes. For the yeah. Oh man. Fuck Pester Quest, man. That's I get their ideas. I get it. You know, Vriska did nothing wrong. Very funny. Haha. All right. Man. Ugh. Janaya, what are your what are your Mindfang
I have
thoughts?
a lot of them, but a lot of them have been covered already. But there were a couple things that were brought up that I wanted to kind of like expand on. One of them being, so I think I like when you're talking about the stuff about her journal and the way that she frames like the bottom, like the back 10% of it. I was remembering that when I was reading the comic, the sense that I got was that, oh, this is a character who's trying to rehabilitate themselves. Like they did all this horrible stuff, and now they're like, but wait, I'm actually a good person. Don't worry, I'm a good person.
It's like Iranian
It's
reverse.
like Iranian reverse. And like, so I think that making that like explicit and clear is good, because like this is not a good person. She's not a revolutionary. She didn't suddenly become this like revolutionary icon. She just hid how horrible she was, and then just wanted to not have to think about the consequences of her actions. Like she's the she's the ultimate extension of the Vriska not wanting to think about like the ultimate consequences of what she does, because Vriska does that a lot. Vriska does something bad, and then you're just not supposed to talk about it anymore. You know, like the way that she acts towards Tavros.
Yes.
and everything with that, where it's like, oh, can't you just get over the fact that I paralyzed your legs? I
Or,
mean, come on, that's
Aradia for killing Aradia.
yeah, you know.
Just forget about it. I made you a
look,
body.
it's
It's fine. Forgive me.
So like I think
Please.
that like again the idea that like Mindfang is an unrepentantly horrible person, and portraying that in the comic I think is very important. For the fucking 50th time, this is not a podcast about sanding all the rough edges off. It's a podcast about making them more deliberate.
Let's make more rough edges. Yeah.
Well, in this case, it's more like recontextualizing the rough edges so that they make sense in the context of the larger narrative.
Yeah. So they actually
Make
hurt.
sure the edges actually appear
Right,
rough
because like
once.
Mindfang is
Yeah.
the character that's like I hate to see this character like woobified. It makes me like physically ill to see this happening.
Yeah.
And like I think it's very important to like, so Next thing I was thinking, and this kind of your comment about Arania in reverse kind of ties into this nicely, is I'd really like to see. I like the idea of having other characters like getting exposed to the contents of Mindfang's journal, because like seeing it only through Vriska's perspective is very limiting, because Vriska idolizes Mindfang, and Vriska is overlooking all the bad stuff and doing the whole like, you know, cognitive dissonance. I idolize what this person is in my mind, not what they really are. You know, this is like the fucking. I mean, we have lots of examples of people that do this in real life, with especially with like political figures, and like, oh, this person is. I built them up to be a certain way, and like they may have done horrible things. So I'm not going to talk about that or think about it. But I would like to see, like, it would be neat to tie all of this together and then like kind of tie it into what Arania becomes, because like Arania and Mindfang, like I made a comment in one of the previous episodes about there's like this river and it diverges at various points, and you've got one branch that becomes Mindfang, and you've got another branch that's like just a little bit up the river that becomes Arania. Because Arania is like Mindfang, but a little bit less little bit less bad, and she does the things because she has these good intentions. You know, she believes that she's doing the right thing for everyone, and that's why she can do the bad things. But the thing is, Arania does some real bad shit. Like, a comment earlier I'd like to respond to is talking about like, oh, Mindfang like had slaves on purpose. So did Arania. Because Arania didn't have the power to move shit around on her own. She mind controlled a whole bunch of Damaras and forced them to do stuff.
Yeah, imagine your Damara sitting in a tree.
As Damaras are known to do, I guess. But like, like Arania did a lot of the same bad things, just like contextualized in the sense of like, I think I'm doing the right thing and I'm protecting everyone. Like Arania's the worst. Arania's the bad ending for a sylph. The person that knows what's best for everyone, and they will make sure it happens. And like, I think that parallel is important, and I think having like characters understand that, and then eventually having Vriska understand that, because like I do agree that Arania is going to be very like important for her understanding like, oh, I was doing a bad thing, because Arania is present in person. Arania is not a legend. Arania is a physical, tangible threat. But also I think that tying that back into the Mindfang thing would be important, so that like I would love the idea of I like the idea of a Vriska that actually has character development. We'll talk about that more once we get post retcon, but like to have Vriska look back and be like connecting the dots between, oh wow, what Arania did was real bad. Oh shit, that's like kind of like how I pictured Mindfang. Oh, that's bad.
Yeah.
Oh, I get it. Like, oh, it was bad all along.
Yeah, some kind of parallel.
Like making that connection between those three characters, where you have the idea that like, again, tying back into the theme of like predestination and inevitability, where you have different versions of a person based on the choices they make. And like, you know, Mindfang was the way Mindfang was, not because like she had to be, but because she made choices. And then like same thing with Arania, where, you know, she's made those choices where the outcome becomes inevitable, but like Vriska's getting a chance to kind of like walk it back a little bit and be like, no, I'm not going to turn into those people. And I think in order to do that, she needs to not idolize Mindfang. Like she needs to consciously and specifically be aware of the problems and say, I'm not going to do this anymore. And I don't feel like the Vriska in the comic really like gets there. She just kind of the post retcon Vriska just keeps doing the same basic thing, but like slightly different. So, you know, I don't love that. I don't love that. I would like Vriska to have actual character growth in the end. And yeah, Mindfang's a piece of shit,
right.
and that does serve a purpose in the narrative. It's just like that's something that I think can be tied to into the three circuits as a collective whole, and like how that impacts different aspects of the narrative.
Right. As a wise person once said, Mindfang is the meeting between girl boss and cringe. The wise person was, of course, me, JoJo Funk McLovin. So that honestly, that covered basically all I had to say about Mindfang. I think we talked about her a little bit in the Act 6 episode or the Act 5 episodes with Momo and Daft. So we shan't belabor the point. So what I would like to talk about next is the last ancestor who matters, quote unquote. But we'll also tack on his cadre, and of course, I'm referring to the surfer fuck, what the fuck, the surfer. Okay, that would be bad.
That's
fuck
the
this.
Beach
Okay.
AU name for the character.
The surfer. I was reading my notes. I got dyslexic for. Oh man. Anyway, the sufferer and his pal, the sufferer and friends, the surfer and anyway, the Dolorosa, Psionic, and Disciple. We'll talk more about the Dolorosa. I think. Well, not that we already talked about the Dolorosa in passing, so I'm not sure what to add about her. Then the Psionic and Disciple we'll also talk about more when we get into next episode with the revolutionary figures. But right now, I guess I'll call it the Cult of the Signless. Being the next topic. Because we've already discussed the Condas, who is an actual character. Mindfang, who is the most characterized. And now the Sufferer, who is sort of the backdrop. He's the axis around which the entire conflict of the ancestors revolves. And I like that. This time, we'll start from left to right again. So, Janaya, I know you just spoke, but what are your ideas about the surfer?
It's my favorite character.
Gnarly, dude.
Yeah, so...
Whoa, dude. We should be, like, equitable and magnanimous.
One of the things I mentioned in the Dancestor, I think it was the Dancestor episode, yes, was the idea that Cancri and the Sufferer should have some degree of parallels established within the comic. And like, okay, so we're dealing with, again, in the context of the rewrite, these are characters that we're not going to dig into this to the extent that we could. One of the things I think is important is to kind of establish, just like we have this line of like Mindfang, Arania, Vriska, I think it's important to have the line of the Signless, Cancri, and Karkat, where you have this kind of parallel where instead of being the, worst pieces of shit ever, you have kind of like different iterations of the revolutionary philosophy, because you've got, the Signless is very like direct, prophetic revolutionary. They're the political leader. They inspire people directly, and they create this whole movement around them. Cancri is very like, Cancri has echoes of that, but Cancri is like in our rewrite where we've made him less of like an insufferable dick. He's a little bit of an insufferable dick, but not like a racist one. Is like he's trying to like emulate that. He wants to talk about equity. He wants to, dismantle these systems. He understands that even before us, with its quote-unquote nice empire, is still an empire, and that's still bad. And then, like, Karkat is kind of trying to, like, wrap all this together and, like, figure out what the fuck he's supposed to do. And I think that, like, also in our rewrite, Karkat is someone that's, like, starting out the comic like very invested in like going into the imperial military and being a leader in the military, despite the fact that would almost certainly get him killed eventually. But I think like Karkat's unpacking the baggage related to the empire, and then Cancri's kind of like struggle with how to find meaning, and then that all ties back into the Signless, because you've got kind of like two parts of the Signless in Karkat and Cancri. You've got the sort of like revolutionary leader, and you've got the orator who speaks for equity. And like those two parts are combined in the Signless, and you see the aspects of how they're developed in Cancri and Karkat. And I think that you don't need to like beat the reader over the head with it, but I think to show to show how that works, to show the signless like in the context of like however we're going to frame the past stuff, whether we're going to do like a cutaway for a little bit or if we're going to do like just the journal stuff, just to talk about kind of what the signless represented, and then like by extension what his sort of revolutionary crew represented, and then what that meant to Alternia as like creating this movement, because I think that does matter a lot to the Vantises, and then it also matters a lot to the story as a whole, because like the ultimate goal of this whole thing, like once we've done the retcon and once we've like started to work against the narrative, is to fully realize what the signless wanted, which was this complete dismantling of this system of power, where you have like a group of people who are like, okay, we all realize how fucked up what we went through was, and that's every iteration of every group of these characters. So like the Alternians realize how bad the Empire was, the beta kids realize how bad the modern American Empire is, because that's the closest thing we have to like our Earth. And the Alpha kids, they know how bad the Earthsea Empire was, before it was called Earthsea. And then all of them take this experience and they create a world where they've committed to not doing that again, and making things genuinely better. And I think that's a very that's kind of the heart of the comic, at least as we're writing it. And I think that it's important to sow the seeds of that end goal. Like you've got the seeds of like the oppressive systems in the Condes and Mindfang and all of them, but I think it's also important to have the seeds of the hope for the future and making things better. Like you can't just like show all of the bad shit and then none of the good shit. That would make the ultimate conclusion of the comic feel forced, and it also just kind of sucks because it's like relentlessly negative, and then it's like, okay, but no, trust us, it's gonna get better. Just trust us. We aren't gonna establish this, but don't worry about it. And I think that's I feel like that's weak storytelling. Like if you want to set up your like hope for the future, it's fine to start planting those seeds in the very beginning, because then you can develop them and grow them through the characters, and you see these dueling narrative forces of imperialism and oppression and freedom and rebellion, and you can actually like do things with that if you establish them, rather than just like, hey, here it is, don't worry about it. A theme, yes, like a thing that writing can have, exactly.
Anna, what are your Sufferer thoughts? And you can include anything from the Dolorosa Psionic and Disciple. I know you have that is like like I said, it's the locus of the story, but it's also the locus of the story that you adapted already. So
yeah. So the thing is, so you were saying how like the Signless is like sets the stage for Alternia. The thing is, he doesn't. Not in the original comic. He's not mentioned.
He should, but he doesn't.
So, honestly, he should... More people need to be aware of him in Homestuck. Because, like, yes, he's very underground.
Like as a historical figure.
But, yeah, he's still... I mean, yes, the Alternian Empire does erase history and whatnot. But history gets out. And we know that because there was an underground group that literally bred Carcatalucis. Like, why do we not get a single touch of the Signless's legacy in Homestuck? The only touch we get is in Karkat himself and Cancri. But, no, I want to see the effect that he left on the actual planet, on the Empire. Because that's, yeah, I mean, fuck, this is a big reason why I love Friendsim and the Friendsim trolls. Because there was a touch of that Signless's legacy in there. There are characters in Friendsim aware of the first... I refer to the Signless's revolution as the first revolution, and the Summoners as the second revolution, and I guess whatever happens in the Hive Swap is the third. But So yeah, that there's no effect left. There's more of an effect left on Alternia from the second revolution because of Ascension than there is from the first. But I want to see. I wish we could have seen more of Alternia, like of yeah, characters on Alternia, like talking about this, talking about like there are some heretical ideas out there. There are some things that you can't say, but they're things that people still say because they're right. Like there could have been so much more explored world building wise by building upon the legacy that the Silence left. And if we're bringing the Dolorosa into this too, like there's a lot of stuff I feel like could be attributed to the Dolorosa that isn't and should be. Like Jade's being cloistered. I mean, my personal headcanon, that is the punishment that the Empire gives all Jade Bloods for the Dolorosa's sins. Like, this is something that, oh, one Jade Blood fucked up, okay, we're gonna punish them all now. Because that's something the Alternian Empire would totally do. But, I mean, that's not confirmed. I think it should be confirmed. I think, yeah, there should be more of a legacy that this one Jade mother left upon Jade society as a whole, and like not to make Jade Bloods like the mom cast altogether, but more like she becomes a figure in Jade lore. And to tell the truth, I don't actually have that many thoughts about the Disciple or the Psionic, because I didn't write very many songs about them. They just got one verse in a song that was mostly the Dolorosas. So,
yeah. Fuck. Yeah, like I said, I'm sorry we can't devote more time to the actual, like, Dolorosa, Psionic, and Disciple. I'm glad you talked about the Dolorosa because she is kind of the most important one.
Honestly, I almost consider it her revolution.
Yeah, I really like the Dolorosa because there's like this vibe of the biggest revolutionary thing you can do is just like helping someone, which is nice.
Yeah, like the Signless might be the one who had the visions. He might have been the figurehead. He might have been. So I had canon that he died before he even turned the equivalent of 18. He was still a child when he was killed. Like, he may have been the darling figurehead of the revolution, but the one who was the real power, the one who kept everything one, rescued the figurehead and raised him, taught him to be kind and loving, brought in a bunch of other people and raised them all too, and, like, the Dolorosa is the one who got that revolution together. So she should be attributed as just as important, if not more important, than the Signless in the first revolution.
What if this is? I just thought of this. This is stupid, but what if the Sufferer, Psionic, and Disciple are like the Dolorosa's children in, you know, they're all hanging out in like a tent or something, and they notice that the Dolorosa like sitting close to the fire and like sitting around it, and so they're like, oh, she's like a moth. She does moth things. She's a mother. And that could be like what they call her, the mother. And that could be very funny because of her theming. Yeah. Did you have anything else to add, Anna?
No, I'm just sighing at your joke.
That's good. Everyone on this podcast, they don't like my jokes. But anyway, my idea about the Sufferer and Signless and his whole crew, my main thing is, like, I love him. Because I like the idea, I like the vibe of like, Christ figures. It is a cliche that I will never get sick of. I know that might be contentious because, like, it's very overplayed, but Christ figures where they're like, no matter what fucked up shit the world throws at them, they, like, turn the other cheek, and they will be kind, and they will promote their message no matter what. Love that. I also love the Signless, how he subverts that in, like, at the end of his thing, the last cheek he turns is like, shitting on Alternia, basically saying, like, instead of Jesus just dying quietly on the cross, he screams. He screams and shouts, and he's like, this is fucked up. You guys suck. And that's awesome. However, I want to know what he actually believed. What is his ideology? That is never expounded upon. Janaya hit upon that, but it can be anything. It doesn't have to be something super complicated. They just say he's a revolutionary figure without expounding on that. Like, his presence is felt not because of what he said, but because of what he did. Not because of his ideology, not because of his ideas, not because of something he believed in. Even in Paradox Space, the comic, not the setting, the comic that centers around the sign list is basically just him saying, like, be nice. And I think it sucks to have the trolls just be like, no, being nice sucks, and that's, like, implied to be part of their culture. I don't like that. I think that the sign list should believe something. It could be something as simple as what Jesus believed, which was basically like, turn the other cheek, non-violence, pacifism, etc. Or it could be something more explicit to our themes that we've already established, such as, like, labor movements or whatever. That might be better suited for the summoner, but whatever it ends up being, just make him fucking have something. Janai, were you going to say something?
I had something I want to add. So a couple things about the Dolorosa and also the Jade Bloods. One, the Dolorosa to Porum to Kanaya is another line that we've kind of established, because having Porum be the person who can sort of teach Kanaya to be more in touch with who she actually is as a person and be more comfortable breaking away from the way that Alternia wants her to be, which is an important lesson for Kanaya to learn. And that kind of ties back into the Dolorosa, where, she is a person who has, she embraces caring about others, but in the way that supports them rather than supports their oppression. Like, it's not just physically caring for people in the sense of, like, making sure they don't die. It's caring for them in a sense of, like, genuinely supporting them emotionally. Also, the thing about the Jade Bloods and the Cloisters and, like, the mother class is, like, there's a difference between the us as the writers saying, yes, you should see this character as a mother. This is a mother class. And the narrative and the Empire saying, you're the mother class now. Like, you've got a class of people who've basically been assigned as the reproductive class, in the sense of facilitating biological reproduction and also facilitating social reproduction. So they're the ones that sort of form the heart of, maintaining the Alternian social mores. And, like, that's something that Kanaya needs to learn to subvert, and that's something that Porum has learned to subvert, but then, like, is powerless to really do anything with that because they're fucked off to the dream bubbles. And that's something the Dolorosa specifically goes against, like, including the messaging that, like, just being supportive of other people doesn't mean that you're inherently supporting, like, whatever thing you were told you have to do. So I think that that's something that can be leaned into deliberately and used to, again, illustrate aspects of Alternia and why it is the way it is. And, like, in order for an empire to perpetuate, it needs people to teach the new people why they should support it, implicitly or explicitly. And the Jade Bloods kind of form that core, where they're the ones that's, they're responsible for the grubs being raised. They're responsible for, like, I mean, the duties are kind of vague in canon, but, like, assigning Lucai to Wigglers or Wrigglers, depending on which spelling you pick, because in canon it's not even consistent. No, it's like one is depending on which version of things you're in. It's like one or both. You're good. But yeah, no, it's I think that that's something that also you've got these kind of three lines, because I do agree that the Dolorosa is extremely important, and like Kanaya is real important because she has the fucking matriorb and is the one that's decided that she's going to be responsible for restarting the Alternian race, and like I think having her like understanding the historic role of the Jade Bloods and the historic way that reproductive labor was handled in the Alternian Empire is important to her developing as a person, so that she doesn't like reproduce any of the bad shit. Like I don't think that Kanaya is like, yes, I can't wait to do eugenics, but like she's still internalized a lot of this bad shit, and she needs to unpack it just like all of the characters do. So yeah.
Yeah. And then wrapping back around, I said my piece. Bucky, what are your thoughts on the signless and his friends?
I guess like obligatory. I really liked Robin Rhythmic's interpretation of the signless in Distant Quest. Like that, I think that and Rift's Disciple, and I don't know who wrote the Psionic off the top of my head, but like the Clade, as Distant Quest calls it, or like the Signless's cohort in that game is pretty solid, and I like what they did with it a lot. I then and it's good because it gives him an ideology, because it really centers what he's doing in like the ideology that Robin chose was that the act of caring about oneself is a radical act under the Alternian Empire. The act of saying that he has self-worth and that he is worth being alive is a radical act, because it's so the caste system is so baked in. So like I would like more of that, or more of like an exploration of like, because like there is no such thing as like human rights on Alternia. Like it's in a truly dismal position. So like you could, by following like Alternia to a couple versions of Earth and onto Earthsea, you could build up some theory and start with like your base theory on the place that doesn't have any sort of like workers' rights or human rights at all, and then slowly build your way up. I don't know, basically just like, yeah, more ideology, good. And the remix on like the Jesus imagery was interesting, I guess. I do like that. I like that it's not explicitly a cross, but it's riffing on it, I guess. But it's also like he didn't have an ideology like Jesus did. It's just purely iconography.
Yeah, I think that outside of Homestuck as a work, I think there are a lot of there's something to say about that, like how Jesus is basically just an icon in modern times, and how you could probably, if you're smarter than I am, you could make some commentary about like, oh well, the Signless is like Jesus, like, but in reality, because he's just an empty icon now. We're not probably going to go with that in the rewrite, so we won't talk about it much, but I really do like that parallel and the way it's subverted. To me, it's like, what the fuck was I gonna say? My brain died. I'm sorry, everybody. I think we've got some extra time, so we'll I thought about going over Red Glare, but I'd like to save that for next time, to save at least one like popular ancestor for next time. So we've talked about the Dolorosa, so let's end out this episode by talking about the Psionic and the Disciple, who are essentially blank slates. Like, we know very little about the Psionic and the Disciple, except that the Psionic becomes the helmsman and dies like a bitch when he is ridden like a pony too hard on the ship, and the Disciple is just like the Sufferer's girlfriend, which is like, that's fine, that's kind of cute, because Nepeta and Nepeta has a crush on Karkat, and then Mulin and Cancri have some implied relations. But in this, it's implied here that like this is like the OTP of the universe. This is one of the only relationships that Hussey like comments on the quality of, which is very strange because it's like a background character. It's like a lore character. But he goes out of his way to say like, yes, the disciple and the sufferer like shared a beautiful thing that went past the quadrants, and it's like, what why
does that
why did he add that
mean,
detail?
Andrew?
There's nothing wrong with this. To be clear, like we've criticized Andrew Hussey for like including weird fucking details before. This is one of those weird details where it's not like this sucks. It's more like,
Yeah,
wait, what?
it's nonsense.
Like you can't even. Oh man. Yeah, it's such a strange detail, but I do like it, and I think with these two characters particularly, we can just paint whatever the fuck we want on them. The psionic, I like the idea of the psionic and disciple being bought in before they meet the sufferer. Like the psionic might be excited to be a pilot. The disciple might be like, "Oh, I can't wait to do whatever it is Olive Bloods do in the Empire." But then they get won over by the Dolorosa and the Sufferer. And I like that because in the Paradox Space comic that I talked about, the Sufferer is depicted as, like, still very aggressive in a very Alternian way, but kind of learning how to be compassionate. And I like that energy where he's like...
You mean the psionic, not the sufferer?
Or, yeah, I got him backwards. Do you guys remember fucking Paradox Space? That was so good.
Yeah. I know exactly what comic you're talking about.
What a good
Silence worms.
Yes, where he's like he says silence worms, but he's doing that in service of like his leader's peace message, and I love that. That's a good vibe. Everyone read Paradox Space. Like I don't know why
I miss Paradox Space.
Why did they?
It was one of the best things this comic
yeah,
had.
It was good.
It was one. It was in an alternate universe. There's like. Paradox Space got continued instead of the epilogues.
Oh,
God. Yeah, honestly, that would be a really
like your
good
timeline better than the one we got.
Yeah, and now I look at our timeline and there's like, oh cool, Hive Swap Act 1 and Friendsim, and then nothing else.
Until Friendsim
the canonical
2.
sequel to Friendsim and Pastor Quest.
Exactly. But yes, so in sum, I guess share your ideas and thoughts about the psionic and or disciple, whoever you pick. We'll end off on that. We'll start right to left with Bucky. Bucky, what are your thoughts?
Again, there's not a lot there. There's like the disciple does like is like the disciple. She rolls up what Jesus's disciples do into one person. She records what she can of the signless, and I'm assuming that this is all the Bible imagery to be fair, but like she records all the stuff about the signless, and then she has like the fucking sacred leggings, whatever the fuck is going on with that. That was like a bunch of it's definitely clearly very jokey and parodying.
It's very like, you know, early
yeah,
early
I think
atheism.
that's still kind of the tongue-in-cheek joke of Homestuck. I think that can remain. I don't know. There's not a lot there, so there's not a lot to like change, or there's not a lot of like different directions to take them in. I guess the one big thing is that like the signless does have like two hands, and I would like to make that whole like the polycule clearer, because that makes sense to me. That makes sense to a lot of ancestor likers. I think making that more that that the signless is dating both the psionic and the disciple, and they've got like cool polyamory shit going on. That's what going beyond the quadrants means, or that's one thing that going beyond the quadrants means, because that's something that like you could use the signless and his relationships to address, is that like the quadrants are an imposed system that isn't the only way to go about having relationships. Yeah, I think that's really the only thing I do.
I like that. The polycule aspect. Hey, this is Future JoJo. I just want to warn you guys. The last 10 minutes of this episode is fucking unlistable. You've been warned. Alright, now back to past JoJo. I think that, okay. Since we have some extra time, I'm gonna say something fucking dumb and stupid. So, I've been sort of taking a sort of deep dive into old defunct sodas. And bear with me. Tab is one of the sodas that is a joke in Homestuck. I like Tab. I think Tab is good. I wish they made... I think they still do make Tab, probably somewhere.
It's been discontinued for ages.
Yeah.
Right?
I say that optimistically, that I think it's got to be somewhere.
I think it's been.
But I think it would be fun if every ancestor had like a patron soda, but like all of them have to be shitty. So, for instance, the Psionic could have Josta because Josta is like this sort of energy drink. The Disciple could have like 7-Up because 7-Up is it's very refreshing. It's got no caffeine.
Fuck is that?
And then to contrast that, the Dolorosa could have do you guys remember Duel? D-U-L?
No.
With a capital L? Now, this might be just me talking out my ass. But I think that defunct sodas are a good sort of icon for the ancestors.
I don't get it. We need a meme that says,
Jojo, what the
"Jojo, what
fuck
are you talking about?"
Yeah.
like the Uber meme.
Is this seriously landing with no one? Like
I don't.
the
Nobody.
tab thing?
Nope.
I don't know if that.
Is
Yeah.
it because of Fago?
What the fuck?
Yeah, I don't know that would.
No, yeah, exactly. It's like obscure sodas are like the icons of various.
Not really doing it for me. I
But
don't
why
know,
the
like-
ancestors in particular? Like,
Because
if
the
you're gonna
Condas has
give the
tab,
ancestor shitty soda,
and it's pink.
I don't.
the tab is a
know
wayward
what?
vagabond thing.
I get yanked off the stage by
Yeah.
a shepherd's hook. Anna, what are
I'm
your
yanking you off the stage so I can say some thoughts now.
fucking?
I'm not.
I thought that would be like a little cool, like,
Yeah.
oh, interesting theming, aesthetics. Nope.
Sorry, Jojo.
Anna,
We don't get it.
what are your thoughts about the Psionic or Disciple?
So, like, one thing about the Disciple that I feel like a lot of people forget about, and honestly, I forgot about in my show, I didn't mention this at all, is the fact that she propagated the Signless's ideology. She's the reason why he's remembered at all, because she wrote his shit on cave walls. And, like, that's something that should be, like, if we were to add to the rewrite a thing about the Signless having had more of an impact on Alternian society, the Disciple has to be mentioned in that as the one who translated it. Like, the one who wrote it down, the one who made sure it's known. Also, I'm remembering this very cute old comic where the Disciple is like very, very old and in a cave, and a young red glare stumbles upon her and like learns the story of the Signless and the teachings of the Signless from the Disciple in this cave, and like brings it out to the world. And like there should be more discussion about the importance of keeping a record.
Yeah. I like that.
Also, the Disciple's backstory is the exact same as Nepeta's backstory in Pester Quest, and I came up with it first.
Nice. Good job, Anna. We all pat you on the back.
I just stole my stuff.
I also want to say I think I might have hallucinated dual soda.
Yeah.
It's not real, is it?
Oh.
Hang on. It's okay. I feel like I'm going insane. There was a soda that was like, it's 7-Up, but caffeinated, and because like No, okay. This is making me go insane. Oh, no, it was DNL. It was DNL, not DUL. It was DNL. I found it.
This soda also sounds fake.
Oh my god. No, I
Like
swear to
Surge?
Christ.
What?
Here it is.
I've never heard of that. So
I put a picture in the chat. Turn your thirst upside.
This is
Surge?
fake.
Did Surge have caffeine?
No!
This is fake as
Definitely
shit.
No!
This is literally the 7-Up logo upside down. That
This
can't
looks
be
like-
legal. This is from
got to be
9gag.
made up.
No! Here's a can.
This is fake. It
God.
says
This is
Turn
a
your
Oh,
thirst
stop
upside
it.
boom up. No!
Yeah, I was gonna say.
DNL so I swear to God. I don't. No, this is fucking unlistenable. I'm not gonna edit this out
is
because the
definitely
listeners will. They have to be subject to this.
Sure.
I get dragged off the stage again by a shepherd's hook. Jediah, what are your final thoughts?
Okay, Jojo. Time for bed. God. Oh boy. I don't really have a whole lot to add. I don't. The psionic, I don't really have a lot of thoughts on. I mean, like the helms and shit is fucked up, and Alternia is terrible all the time. But like, that's not really something that has a lot of like direct relevance to anything we're doing in the rewrite. And then like, I think it's good to have the idea that the disciple is the one that kind of makes sure that the record of all this stuff is perpetuated throughout Alternia, because like, again, if you're going to have like the revolutionary ideals be a thing that people are aware of, then like you need somebody to have written them down or talked about them. Also really like the idea of the Red Glare finding the cave, because like one of the things I'll talk about this with Red Glare is I like the idea of the second revolution, and then onward from there, continuing the ideals of the Signless, even though the Signless is dead. Like, the ideals live further than any one person. So, like, the Disciple's part of that whole process,
That's
which
fair.
I think is good.
But
yeah,
for those listening at home, I've been posting obscure sodas in the chats that we share.
So, I'm gonna just cut it off.
I really, there's
Hubba Bubba's Delaware Punch? Why
Yeah.
don't you
I
ever
think
want to drink
that's-
Delaware?
I'm pretty sure Delaware
Yes.
Punch is a
These all
move
look
that All Might
wretched,
has
like,
in My Hero
terrible.
Academia.
It
I
definitely
like
is.
the
Actually, no, I
bubble
think
gum
it's Deku.
soda
Delaware
Yeah.
Smash.
killing
So-
me.
Uh-huh.
oh man, my favorite obscure soda is Josta.
No,
because
that's the character in Smash
No,
Brothers,
that-
Captain Delaware.
This is. I feel like I'm going insane right now.
Never heard of any.
DNL is. I've
No,
seen it.
you
I
have
have seen
not.
it. I know I have.
That can't be legal.
I'm
not
not
It's
saying
not
that one
real,
isn't
it's
real.
fake
I'm saying
as
the
shit.
DNL one isn't real.
One of us is gaslighting the other. I don't.
Yeah, you're gaslighting us into thinking this
You
thing
have
is
to make
I
the
feel
definitely
like
thumbnail
you're
legal.
trying to
is
gaslight
DNL
us.
thing now.
Yeah.
No,
The
that
DNL
one.
soda.
We're
I-
gaslighting each other.
No.
DNL soda.
No.
I don't.
Wait, that'll
Again,
be the
this is
logo for
fucking
the rewrite.
unlistenable.
It's just the Homestuck logo.
This is what people paid for the Patreon to get access to. The fucking obscure soda lore.
Turn your cannon
Anyway,
upside down.
That's all I've got. Next time we'll talk about the other guys, such as the GHB, the Grand High Blood, Red Glare, Dark Lier, the Summonair, Dual Ska Air, and the Handmaid. I think that those characters will be we'll have more to say, paradoxically, because they're kind of more blank slates. But yeah, once again, thanks Anna for coming out. Yeah, we already plugged your stuff up top, but listen to our
Go watch Time's Apprentice.
Yeah, watch
also,
Time's Apprentice.
Go listen to my album Hot on Bandcamp. There's
Nice.
some Homestuck stuff in that too.
Nice.
There's a bonus track that's from Time's Apprentice.
Yeah.
That's just a different recording of it. But yeah.
Subscribe to Farticulately Composed. No, I'm just kidding. Articulately Composed on YouTube.
Yeah, go see my latest video. It has a bunch of the people in this call in it.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
Including JoJo's music.
Yeah. Next time we'll talk about more ancestors, but for now, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. I'm gonna stop recording now. Yeah, that's true. I've stopped recording. Rewriting Homestuck is a podcast by JoJo McLovin, Janiah Riley, and Bucky Grant, hosted and produced by me, JoJo. Please follow the links in the description to each collaborator's Twitter and subscribe on YouTube.